Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Ritual. I only brought out my Ethereal Visions Tarot today because I thought I'd take questions from you guys again, because I'm wanting to... I'm really getting the message that I shouldn't just draw cards to draw cards. And, also it's worth saying that I have been pulling a lot of cards for myself off of Morning Ritual about various other questions and things. Hi, everyone. So good to see you all. And I really don't want to pull cards just to pull cards because that's what we do on Morning Ritual, especially because I feel like you guys probably have questions that we could talk about. Struggling with self-doubt, pushing forward with my goal to become self-employed. Dude, and we've drawn that self-employment card so many times. It's kind of crazy. Struggling with self-doubt, pushing forward with my goal to become self-employed. Okay, well, I'm just going to pull a card for you. And this will kind of have a little bit of a jumper. I wasn't going to pull this for you. I was going to ask people to help me pull. But, so, Six of Swords... just because it jumped, we're going to talk about how this can apply. The Six of Swords I always see as this, it's a moving forward. And it's a moving forward despite hardship and despite struggle and despite... the swords I often see in throughout most of the suit. Swords are like pieces of the truth. So if the Ace of Swords is like the truth, and then each sword card depicts the truth being split into different pieces and perspectives. And in the Six of Swords, there's some, we have voices in our head that tell us that we're amazing and that we're capable. And then we also have voices in our head that tell us that we're worthless and we're incapable and we're stupid and we're bad and we make bad choices. And, different people hear those at different volumes, and I think you can train yourself to not listen to one as much as the other, although they're both valuable, and I don't think it's a good idea to just shut one down. But anyhow, the Six of Swords I see as, you have all of these thoughts about that may hold you back or weigh you down, and some of them tell you one thing and some of them tell you another, and, you have this inner knowing of where you need to go and what you need to do, and then you have these pieces of the truth that you carry with you, and some of them inspire you and some of them terrify you, and some of them may do both of those things. And the Six of Swords depicts the figure in the card moving forward towards their star on their journey, like down the path that they know calls them, despite all of this difficulty and all of this trouble. And yes, you're leaving an island for the sea, which is, in a sense, you're leaving the ground for the unknown. But and this goes back also to Jordan Peterson talks about wandering around in the desert for 40 years after leaving a tyranny in Egypt. It's like, well, when you're wandering around in the desert for 40 years, a tyranny in Egypt starts to look pretty good. You may start to want to go back to the tyranny because at least there's some structure to it. At least you can understand it and know what your place is there, and you have something. And out in the desert you have nothing, and out in the ocean you have nothing really but your swords. And that may feel less. It is less secure than the island that you were on before, but you were already there, and you knew, when you were there, you determined that was not the place that you wanted to end up. You determined that you needed to go somewhere else, and you needed to continue your journey, and continue moving towards your star, moving towards your goal. And so, though you may not know exactly where you're going, You know what it looks like, and you know it's not that back there. And yeah, you know it's not the ocean too, and so it can feel pretty scary to be out on the ocean when you know the ocean is not what you want. You have to cross the ocean to get to what you want, even if you don't know exactly where it is. Yeah, I think that's what the Six of Swords has to say about that. Does that answer your question? I would be ready to address another question if you feel like that covers it. You said the fear is crippling. This card is spot on, so I feel like that's positive. Did somebody else say something else? I'm going to scroll up. Did anyone else say anything? What? Sometimes you just have to take the dive. It's a real struggle. And yeah, cool. Okay. So, if anyone else has any other questions, I'd be down to take maybe one more. Moving through the unknown to get to a better unknown. And we have the Magician just sitting here on the bottom of the deck. I like that though, as a reminder of our personal power in whatever situation we happen to find ourselves. Okay, well, if no one else has any questions in the next, like, I don't know, minute, then I may just call that enough for today and go. What? Why are they wanting to take your talk down? Wait. What? I'm sorry. This is important. T, I need to know more about this. Why is Ted wanting to take your TED Talk down? For those of you who don't know, T/An Experiment with Joy has done a wonderful TEDx talk on the healing power of laughter and smiling. And I watched it, and it helped me, and it's clear that it's helped her, and it's pretty clear that it's helped quite a few other people. So I'm sad that anybody would want to take that away, and I'm just also just like really confused why that would be the case. Sorry, can I pull a card from you? Oh my god. We have to talk about these things. Okay. I don't know if I'm... So, apparently, Ted wants to take your talk down because you mentioned suicide. That's the most ridiculous thing. I've heard a lot of ridiculous things. I don't know if that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard, but that is on that list. Yeah, is it still the link in your bio, T? Because... Man, but don't they have, like... I mean, there's no sort of disclaimer, like the views of our speakers are not representative of the views of the organization. Awareness is important. We need to get over taboos. Not talking about it doesn't make it not real or go away. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's so much that we don't know, and it's you know, there may be facts that they can't verify, but that doesn't mean that they need to shut down the conversation. And like, yeah, no, exactly. Like, that sounds like a fucking bullshit answer. I'm sorry. It's like I've been, I don't know how many of you know this about me. I went to Baylor University, which is a Baptist university in, hi Jana, perfect timing, which is a Baptist university in Waco, Texas. And while I was there, I co-founded an organization called the Sexual Identity Forum. And we ended up calling ourselves the Sexual Identity Forum because we tried to start as a chapter of the Gay Straight Alliance, and they wouldn't have it. They were basically like, okay, we don't have a problem with you existing. Like, we tried to charter ourselves. We applied to be a chartered organization on Baylor campus so that we could have meeting rooms and things and plan events. And they said, oh, okay, well, you could be here, but you basically have to take the word gay out of the like, everything that you're talking about. Okay, so you could keep the video, but it wouldn't be a TED Talk on their channel. Well, at least they aren't, like, claiming full rights and taking it away. But still, that, I understand that you're struggling with that. If you're down, I would pull a card. I'd be happy to pull a card for you on that. Just, I would want, like, explicit consent from you. I'm also going to finish this Baylor story. So they were basically like, okay, you can be a gay straight alliance, or you can talk about these things. We don't want to hinder academics, but you basically have to take the word gay out of your mission statement and your title and everything. Like, we can't have that on this campus. So we rewrote our charter to be the Sexual Identity Forum, and it was just like we were talking about gender and family issues and things, and we were meeting. We met every Thursday at 8 p.m. in the student union building, because that's the only place you're allowed to meet if you're not a chartered organization. And man, like, over the semester, like, they never told us that we couldn't meet, but every semester, like 6 times, we applied for a charter, and every time they were like, you gotta change these things. You gotta change these things. And in the end, they were like, look, we get it. You're determined, but you don't understand. We have funding that we need to keep. We're not gonna stop you from talking about these things, but in no way are we about to look like we're supporting you, because we have sponsors that we can't lose, and we will lose them if we charter you. And, you know, it was like they could never say that, but the look in their eyes said it all. And okay, T, I see your consent, and I will pull a card for you. I'm gonna ask then, because I also feel like this is, I do feel like this isn't just for you, because I feel like people, oh my god, this came up in my T-set, people choosing censorship when over, like, just actually having a conversation in integrity. Like, it seems immediately easier to just shut a conversation down if it gets uncomfortable, but you can't just shut down the class of all conversations. They don't go away, or of all difficult conversations. And you can't just... Shutting people up is not the right way to resolve these issues. We have to have these conversations, even if they are difficult or unpleasant. And I know what you're saying. I've had so much shit from the stuff I've done before. This is what T says. When you go against the grain, they quote me out of context in local press. It's frustrating. I know what you mean. And so I am gonna pull this card, and I am gonna ask the community to help pick an emoji to pull the card. And I am gonna pull this card for your situation, but I also think that the question of how can we align ourselves to be to deal appropriately with the way that pieces of the world and members of our community and members of our society will try to silence us or shut us down or shut down important conversations, and how do we find the ways to be heard and without crossing the wrong lines, I guess. I don't know. It's a complex question, and it's a complex question, and I don't know if we can answer the whole thing today, but we're gonna at least pull a card on it. And whenever we see any emoji that is smiling or laughing, I'll pull the card. And I think that would be a proper celebration of T's talk, which you should all go watch after this. It's actually quite short also, so it will not take you long to do. Okay, there's a smiling one. Oh my god! I don't have anything else to say about this at this point. Like, we just totally dissected this card. I don't know how many of you have been here the whole time, but this is the jumper that we had earlier on our last question. And we've like, yes, again, like, this was, you saw me shuffling this deck, and I stopped shuffling when I saw the smiley face from T, and it was the same card on top. I'm doing everything I can, guys, to keep this, you know, random and fair and let the universe do the choosing. I don't want to repeat my, you know, it was a long conversation, T, and I am gonna summarize it for you, but you really should go back and listen to the replay, because I think you'll get a lot out of it. And we were talking about it earlier in the context of, moving forward with self-employment despite all the fears and setbacks there. And the Six of Swords really just is about moving forward towards whatever is your star or your goal, despite all of the fears and the burdens, and despite the fact that you're leaving. It would be easy in one way to just go with the grain and go with the flow and behave how structures of power want you to behave, and to never talk about the things that they don't want you to talk about. In some sense, that would be easy. But in one sense, in another, I think, truer sense, it is the most painful thing that we do to live out of alignment with our true higher selves. And even if the world around you makes it easy, is accommodating when you behave in a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean that that is the correct way to behave. Now, just because you're going against the grain doesn't mean that you're leading an important revolution. Know what you're doing. Do question whether what you're doing is helpful, or whether what you're doing is just rebellious. But I can tell you, T, that what you're doing is not simply rebellious. And I think that's like obvious. Like, I don't know, man. I don't get it. I don't identify with anybody who would want to take your talk down, but I understand and I believe that those people exist, and I understand that they have a struggle within them. What's right and what can we defend in court? And what's the difference between those two things? and so, when you go against the grain and when you do your own thing, you're going out into the unknown, into the waters. And when you're talking about things that are uncomfortable, it's because you're talking in uncharted territory. You're sailing in uncharted territory on uncharted waters. And the swords that you carry with you, well, they're symbols of your vulnerability, of the ways that you're vulnerable and the ways that you can be harmed. But they're also ways that others can be harmed, which translates, oddly enough, to ways that you can protect yourself. And you don't protect yourself by harming other people, but you do protect yourself by having the power to harm other people and choosing not to use it. Does that make sense? It doesn't make very much sense in English, but I think I don't have another way to say that. And yes, there is sorrow in this card, and the sorrow is the tragedy that we have to carry swords to protect ourselves. There's not a single card in the tarot deck that denies tragedy. And that's I think one of the most beautiful things about tarot. There's not a single card that denies the existence of tragedy, because tragedy is everywhere. But every single card, I think, also posits that there is something that makes the tragedy worth suffering through. That there is something that is beautiful enough and true enough and worth experiencing enough to suffer through the tragedy. But the fact that there is tragedy, it doesn't mean that we have to be monsters. It doesn't mean that we have to live as monsters, but we do have monsters within us. And because we know that we have monsters within us, we know that there are monsters within other people. And we don't have to protect ourselves from other people, I don't think, but we do have to protect ourselves from the monsters in other people. And you have to know, before you can trust somebody, you have to know that they're monsters, that they've identified their monsters as separate entities from themselves that they have to watch out for. Because if they're not watching out for their own monsters, then you have to watch out for them. And if you have to watch out for someone else's monsters, then you don't have time to relate to them as a human being on a soul level. Jana says, I saw a 10-year-old girl carrying a pink plastic bat around our neighborhood so she can protect herself. And my first instinct when I read that actually was, yeah, you go, girl. And my second instinct when I read that is, how tragic that a 10-year-old has to carry a pink plastic bat around to feel safe in her neighborhood. And both those things are true. How tragic that she has to do that, and how beautiful that she rises and she does. Well, we tried to draw 2 cards today, but the deck just gave us the 6 of Swords. So if you have a question, you know, ask your question, but just know that the answer probably lies within the 6 of Swords today, because that's the only answer my deck feels like handing out. And that said, I love you guys, and I love you guys so much. And I'm so grateful to all of you for showing up for these conversations. Yeah, and you know, I wish that we lived in a world where I could say, just forget about the tragedy and rise above it. But I don't think you can successfully rise above the tragedy and forget about it at the same time. And I think that's what the 6 of Swords is about, and I think that's what Ted doesn't understand right now if they're trying to take down your talk. I love you guys so much, and I will see you here tomorrow morning.